Your services are no longer required. The words hit me like a physical blow, a slap that left a burning sting on my cheek. A freezing vortex opened in my stomach, nausea rising in my throat. I felt like I was about to throw up right on the damn mahogany table, polished to a mirror sheen, standing in the conference room I had personally chosen, with such pride, 3 years ago. 15 years. 15 damned years of my life I had poured into this company, building it from the ashes, brick by brick. And now, 7 words, delivered with stone-cold faces, erased it all. I scanned the faces gathered around the table. Men. Men I had worked side by side with for over a decade. Men at whose family celebrations I had been a welcome guest, whose children I had watched grow up. Men who had called me in the dead of night, at 2 a.m, when projects were going to hell, knowing that I, as always, would pull them out of the muck. And now, they couldn't even meet my eyes. Everyone except Walter. The CEO, Walter Sterling, looked directly at me. His gaze held the practiced mask of corporate indifference, but a telltale nervous twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed the truth. Satisfaction. The bastard was gloating. My name is Madison Lancaster. I'm 43 years old. And until 9:17 a.m. that fateful Tuesday, I was the Chief Operating Officer of Apex Health Innovations. Before I continue, if you're watching this, leave a comment telling me what city you're from, and subscribe to hear stories that will chill your blood and make your heart pound. We've decided to take the company in a new direction, Walter said. His voice had the calibrated, commanding power that had once impressed me. Ethan will be taking over your position. Effective immediately. Ethan. Ethan Davies. Walter's son-in-law, who had been with the company for a grand total of 7 months. The same Ethan who had asked me what HIPAA was last week. The same Ethan who had been promoted to vice president the day after his wedding to Walter's daughter, Chelsea. I see, was all I managed to say. My voice sounded detached, even to my own ears. And when exactly did the board vote on this? I shot a meaningful look at Trevor, our CFO, who had been texting me about our afternoon coffee date just yesterday. Trevor suddenly found his notepad incredibly fascinating. The decision was made last night. An unscheduled meeting. A surprise gathering that I had no clue about. A meeting where they decided to replace me with a pretty-faced, 32-year-old hedge fund brat whose main accomplishment was being born into the right family and marrying well. HR has prepared your compensation package. Walter slid a thick manila envelope across the table towards me. Quite generous, we think. We're not animals, Madison. Right, animals would have been more honest. I didn't even touch the envelope. 15 years, I whispered, feeling my throat constrict. I was here when we were just 17 people crammed into a converted warehouse in Hoboken. I personally signed our first hospital contract. Flew to Hong Kong with a horrific case of food poisoning to save the evergreen deal when everyone else chickened out. A heavy silence filled the room. I could almost physically feel their collective guilt, bitter, with a metallic tang. We appreciate your contributions, Walter recited the practiced phrase. But Apex needs fresh perspectives now. The healthcare landscape is changing. Fresh perspectives, I echoed, feeling everything inside me tighten. What he really meant was that his precious little daughter was itching to see her husband in my corner office. What he really meant was that he was afraid I had become too powerful, too indispensable. What he really meant was that I had become a threat to his little world. I stood up, trying to keep my face composed, even though a full-blown hurricane was raging inside. My legs, strangely, held me steady, despite the internal earthquake. I'll clear out my office, I said, trying to keep my voice from trembling. No need to rush, Walter replied, oozing a fake semblance of cordiality. Take the day. Security will assist you. Security? What, did he think I was a thief? Did he really think I was capable of taking anything other than the pain and disappointment? I had given this company everything, down to the last drop. Weekends, holidays, a personal life that had withered like a flower without water because I was always, you hear, always working. I missed my father's last birthday to close that goddamn Series B funding round. I put off freezing my eggs until it was too late, naively thinking next year will be easier. My life became Apex. And now, I was being thrown out like some kind of criminal. I headed towards my office, feeling the stares of my former team burning into my back. Yes, the news would be spreading through the corporate corridors like wildfire. The electronic whispers of the telegraph and faceless messages in Slack. I could physically feel people turning away, hastily reassessing their priorities and loyalties. By lunchtime, my most steadfast allies would be sending hypocritical congratulations to Ethan. My office, overlooking the majestic Hudson River, which I so rarely found time to enjoy, suddenly felt alien, hostile. The awards on the wall, the family photos, mostly nieces and nephews, never had children of my own, the high heels hidden under my desk, all artifacts from a life from which I was being ruthlessly evicted. I grabbed a cardboard box from the closet and began the humiliating process of packing up my past life. 15 years of career condensed into one pathetic container, my nameplate from the door, the lucky pen I used to sign our first $1 million contract, a framed photo of our original team, most of whom had long since scattered to other, more promising ventures. Everyone, that is, except me, loyal, faithful Madison. A lump formed in my throat as I reached for the small jade tree on the windowsill. It was a gift from my mother the day I became a co-founder. "Grow strong and steady," she had said then, looking at me with hopeful eyes. "Just like you," the phrase echoed in my mind as I looked at the plant. It had survived, blooming despite my neglect, despite the lack of care. Unlike my relationships, unlike my ability to have children, unlike, apparently, my career. A quiet knock at the door pulled me from these dark thoughts. Nicole, my loyal assistant for the past 6 years, stood hesitantly in the doorway. Her eyes were red, betraying her anxiety. They already offered me a job working for him, her voice trembled, revealing her turmoil. I told them I needed to think about it. The words came with difficulty, as if each one caused her pain. "Take the job, Nicole," I replied, surprised by my own firmness. Not a trace of doubt, not a hesitation. "You have your mother's medical bills." "I understand." She nodded, and tears, as if breaking through a dam, streamed from her eyes. "She didn't try to hide them, and why should she? They're saying you messed up the Westlake deal. That the costs got out of control. That's why it didn't close." The lies were already spreading like poisonous ivy. Rewriting history in a dirty attempt to justify betrayal. "We both know that's bullshit," I whispered, feeling a wave of anger rising inside. "Westlake is the most successful acquisition in the company's history." "I know. Everyone knows," she confirmed, biting her lip. She hesitated, as if reluctant to say something else. He wants your files, your contacts, everything." "Of course, he does," I chuckled, bitterly and joylessly. "Ethan wouldn't be able to do my job without my carefully crafted roadmap. Without me, he's blind. Tell him that company policy requires an official request through." I spat out, feeling the rage boiling inside. "Two can play at these corporate games," I added with an icy smile. No sooner had Nicole disappeared behind the door than the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost hung up, not wanting to listen to hypocritical condolences from cowardly colleagues who couldn't visit me in person. But something inside made me answer. "Madison Lancaster," I said, and the professional mask instinctively tightened on my face. "Madison, this is Josephine Vargas." My breath caught in my throat. Josephine Vargas, CEO of Global Healthcare Solutions, Apex's nemesis. The very woman Walter Sterling referred to behind her back as a shark in a pantsuit. The one whose innovations had steadily eroded Apex's market share for the past 2 years. "Josephine," I said cautiously, trying to hide my excitement. "This is unexpected." "I'll get straight to the point," she replied, her voice conveying a steely grip but also an unexpected warmth. "I heard what happened. News travels fast. I want to meet with you today." A hurricane of thoughts raged in my head. Meeting with Apex's main competitor on the day of my dismissal is a direct violation of at least 3 clauses of my employment contract. But wait. I don't work there anymore. Why? I asked, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. Because Apex just made the most idiotic mistake in their corporate history, and I intend to make the most of it. There was a short pause on the line, as if she was savoring the moment. The Plaza Hotel, at 4. The tea room. Come alone, and we'll discuss how to turn this debacle into the best thing that ever happened to you. The line went dead, giving me no chance to reply. I collapsed into the chair, still my chair, probably for the next hour. The phone in my hand was clenched so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Apex had thrown me away like used goods after 15 years of sacrifice and dedication. 15 years of missed family holidays, ruined relationships, buried dreams, all for a company that turned out not to care. I was replaced by someone whose main qualification was marrying the boss's daughter. I glanced at the box of personal belongings. A ridiculously small box for a lifetime dedicated to work. And the jade tree, which, despite everything, continued to grow green and reach for the light. The phone vibrated in my hand, notifying me of a message from security. EA in 20 minutes for escort. They didn't even give me a chance to leave with my head held high. The initial shock subsided, giving way to something rising from the depths of my being. Not just anger, not just resentment, something darker, more primal. They thought they could just push me aside, erase my contribution, and I'd disappear as if I never existed. Walter. He always underestimated me. It was his fatal mistake. He saw me as just a reliable workhorse, a loyal lieutenant, willing to endure insults and ask for more. He never saw the steel rod hidden beneath my outward compliance. It never occurred to him that my acquiescence was a conscious choice, not a weakness. I picked up the phone again and created a new contact, Josephine Vargas. Then, without opening it, I carefully placed the compensation package in my bag. Whatever they offered, it wasn't enough to compensate for what they had taken from me. Security entered the office. 2 men I had personally approved for hire last year. Their eyes showed guilt, but their postures showed resolve. "We're just doing our job, Ms. Lancaster," the senior one said quietly. "I know, Phil," I replied, picking up my meager box and straightening my shoulders. "Everyone's just doing what they have to." We moved through the open space, and silence fell instantly. Keyboards froze, and dozens of eyes followed my final path. In some, I saw sympathy, in most, wariness, and in some, undisguised ambition. They were already calculating how my failure could be their chance to rise. At the elevator, I noticed Ethan, surrounded by 2 board members whom he was obviously entertaining. His impeccable suit couldn't hide his mediocrity. He gave me a nod of mock sorrow, the face of a man playing a role he didn't deserve. I could have just walked past. Should have walked past with dignity. But instead, I stopped. "Congratulations, Ethan," I said, my voice loud enough to draw everyone's attention. "And one small question to finish. Do you even remember what HIPAA is?" His face flushed crimson instantly. The board members looked visibly embarrassed. "I'm sure Ethan is perfectly familiar with compliance issues," one of them interjected hastily. "Of course," I said with a faint, almost ominous smile. "Just thought that since it's the cornerstone, the law on which our entire company is built, maybe he should share his knowledge with the rest of us, for clarity." Ethan's jaws tightened, betraying his inner rage. "Health insurance, portability, Anne." He stammered, as if the last words were stuck in his throat. "Accountability," I finished for him, enjoying his bewilderment. Act of 1996. I helped develop the first compliance protocols. They're in the blue folder on the left shelf in your new office. You might want to skim through it before tomorrow's call with New York Presbyterian. They're quite the sticklers. Without waiting for his reply, I turned and headed for the elevator, feeling a slight satisfaction. A small victory, but it sweetly reminded everyone what they were losing. That his replacement is impossible. The spring air outside hit me like a slap of truth. I had walked through these doors for 15 years, and now a wall stood before me. My access card deactivated, email blocked, 15 years erased in 15 minutes. I got into my sensible Audi, a car bought to create an image of success without ostentatious luxury, and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The world had collapsed. Hot, scalding tears streamed from my eyes, unstoppable. I sobbed, mourning my lost identity, the pointless sacrifices made for nothing. The future that seemed so secure had crumbled to dust. But when the tears subsided, they were replaced by a dark, ominous resolve. A whisper sounded inside me, "They think this is the end of your story? Show them they're wrong. This is just the beginning." I glanced in the rearview mirror, reapplied my smeared lipstick, and turned the key in the ignition. Ahead lay a 4 p.m. meeting, a meeting that could turn everything around. The Plaza Hotel towered over the city, like an elegant rebuke to Apex's soulless glass and steel skyscrapers. Old money versus new tech. Amidst the polished wood and impeccable service, I felt a strange sense of peace. Perhaps it was because both the hotel and I had seen empires rise and fall, yet maintained our dignity. In the tea room, Josephine Vargas, a queen in her own right, sat alone at a corner table. At 55, she exuded the confidence of a woman who never apologized for her ambition. Ink-black hair, streaked with silver, was cut into a severe bob that framed her keen eyes. She rose to meet me, her eyes scanning me like an X-ray. "Madison," she said, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, confident. "Thank you for coming." Her grip was strong but welcoming, confident, with no hint of dominance. Every gesture spoke of a woman who knew her worth. "Just curiosity," I replied, settling into the chair. "And, frankly, nothing more interesting on the horizon." She acknowledged my candor with a slight smile. "Let's order first, then I'll tell you how Apex suddenly presented me with the very competitive advantage I've been seeking for years." She chose Earl Grey, I opted for a double espresso. I needed the jolt. "I've been following your career," she said, once the waiter had left the table. 15 years building Apex's operating system. Hospital networks, compliance systems, customer relations. She leaned forward, as if sharing a secret. "You are Apex, Madison. Not Walter, not that board of golfing directors." She paused for emphasis. "You." Her words touched a raw nerve that still ached. "Obviously not," I said, unable to mask the bitterness. Obviously, I was easily replaced by someone whose main qualification was a successful marriage. "Walter was a complete idiot, always," Josephine said with a dismissive wave, as if swatting away a pesky fly. "But his blunder is my opportunity. I want you to work at Global Healthcare Solutions, Madison. And not just as a manager, but as a partner." I blinked, stunned. "Partner? Equity, a seat on the board, carte blanche to build without Walter's constant sniping?" She sipped her tea, her gaze never leaving mine. "I've seen you navigate problems at Apex that we at Global Healthcare Solutions are still banging our heads against. Imagine what you could accomplish when Walter isn't questioning your every idea." The offer was audacious. But 15 years in business had taught me to approach everything with a healthy dose of skepticism. "Why do you trust me so much? I was your competitor. What if I'm a Walter spy?" Josephine laughed, her laughter so infectious and genuine that several people at nearby tables turned to look. "Walter simply doesn't have the imagination for such a ploy. Besides," her eyes narrowed slightly, "I see something in you that I know well. The look of a woman who's been underestimated her entire career, who's worked twice as hard to get half the recognition, whose brilliant ideas were shamelessly co-opted by men in meetings, stealing her well-deserved applause." She carefully placed her cup on the table, and I recognized that look, the look of someone reaching their limit. Her words struck like a thunderclap, a revelation. She was right. I, too, had reached a point of no return. 15 years of stifled anger, of forced smiles in response to condescending explanations, of silently watching my ideas being taken by others. It had all been building up inside, hardening into something dangerous. And what, specifically, are you proposing? I asked, leaning forward. A spark of excitement flickered in Josephine's eyes. Apex has won the contract renewal with Cleveland Clinic for 6 years running. The new cycle starts in 3 months, and it's currently worth $47 million a year. I nodded. I had personally led the last 2 rounds of renewal negotiations. I want it, she stated simply. And you know exactly how to get it. The Cleveland Clinic contract was the crown jewel of Apex. I had built that relationship from scratch, nurturing it through difficult implementations, system glitches, and budget constraints. I knew every stakeholder by name, knew what sports their children played. Knew who needed detailed technical reports and who just wanted the bottom line. My non-compete agreement. I began hesitantly. Aggressive, but ultimately limited, Josephine finished, taking a sip of her tea. Our legal team has thoroughly reviewed Apex's standard executive contract. They can prevent you from working with us directly for a year. They can prevent you from poaching their employees. But they can't prevent you from consulting with their clients. Her words were music to my ears. The loophole was elegant, almost audacious. Consulting for Cleveland Clinic wouldn't violate the agreement, if done carefully. And if the Cleveland Clinic decides to switch vendors after my consultations, well, that's their business. But something was bothering me. Why the partner status right away? That's too generous for someone you barely know. Josephine placed her cup on the table with a soft clink. A steely glint flashed in her eyes. Because half of something extraordinary is better than all of something mediocre. Because I built global healthcare solutions by recognizing talents that others turned away from. And because. Her voice hardened, laced with undisguised fury. I've waited 5 long years to see Walter Sterling's face when he loses the Cleveland Clinic. When he realizes that his biggest mistake wasn't just losing you. It was creating an enemy who knows all his vulnerabilities. The vendetta against Walter burned within her like an unquenchable fire. I promised myself I'd dig into that story later. For now, their shared thirst for revenge aligned perfectly with my interests. I need complete autonomy, I stated, already calculating the terms in my mind. My own team, no interference in my methods. Agreed, Josephine replied curtly. And a 2-year protection clause, in case our collaboration doesn't work out. Perfectly reasonable. I took a breath. Josephine, tell me the truth, why was I fired? You have people everywhere. What really happened? She stared at me intently, as if weighing how much information she could trust me with. The Summit acquisition, she finally said. Walter's going to announce it next month. A $2.7 billion deal, the biggest in the company's history. But their security protocols are a nightmare. There are gaping holes everywhere, threatening HIPAA violations. You would have noticed it immediately. And you would have demanded that everything be fixed before the deal closed. Summit Group. Of course. A rising star in prescription management systems, with their flashy interface hiding fundamental security problems. 6 months ago, I warned Walter not to get involved with them. Ethan, without a doubt, won't see the catch, I said, as if testing the words. He'll be fixated on the pretty numbers, on the packaging. Josephine nodded knowingly. It was vital for Walter to get you out of the way before any serious due diligence. You were the only executive who couldn't be intimidated or charmed into turning a blind eye to the rot. The betrayal stung even more knowing that I was removed not despite my competence, but because of it. I wasn't just an obstacle to cronyism. I was a threat to their insane ambitions. I need time, I finally said, feeling a heaviness growing in my chest. This isn't just a job. It's a complete reevaluation of everything, I finished, waving my hand vaguely. I understand. Take 48 hours, then call me. She handed me her business card across the polished table. But remember, your value is at its peak right now, while your knowledge is fresh, and while you have a chance. She paused meaningfully, her eyes speaking louder than words. To right the wrong, the time is now, before they're entrenched in the relationships you created. Right the wrong, I repeated, smirking to myself. What an elegant expression for what was going on in my head. Inside, a fire of revenge was already igniting, cloaked in a civilized form. The spring evening sparkled with anticipation as I left the plaza. My phone buzzed in my pocket with insistent messages from former colleagues, the most desperate ones, risking contact with me. Ignoring them, I drove aimlessly around Manhattan, my head filled with a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. I ended up in Riverside Park, at a tiny overlook where I sometimes had lunch when the office walls started to close in on me. Below, the Hudson River flowed majestically and slowly. On the opposite bank, the Apex building stood tall, its upper floors still lit up. While the workday continued there without me, my phone rang again. This time, the name that appeared was one I hadn't expected. Dr. Evelyn Sawyer, chief physician at the Cleveland Clinic. Madison? Her familiar voice sounded worried. I just found out. Are you okay? Evelyn and I shared more than just a business relationship. Over the years of collaboration, we'd spent many sleepless nights together, fine-tuning system integrations, exchanged book recommendations, and I was genuinely happy when her daughter got into medical school. Still in limbo, I admitted, feeling my cheeks flush. How did you guess? Walter called personally to assure me that nothing would change for us, her voice laced with such disdain that I involuntarily shuddered. Said his son-in-law would personally take over our affairs. And I told him that before agreeing to an extension, we needed to weigh all the options. Steel rang in her voice. Madison, we chose Apex because of you. Your understanding of our needs, your honesty when things go wrong, your approach of offering solutions instead of excuses. My heart is full of gratitude. That means a lot, Evelyn. This isn't just sentiment. The contract renewal process starts in 3 months, but we're already evaluating suppliers. And we'll value your opinion, given your unique perspective. It was the most direct invitation she could give me without violating ethical guidelines. I might be available for independent consulting soon, I said cautiously. Once I sort out my departure. Excellent. My assistant will contact you next week. She paused briefly, and her voice turned steely. And remember, Madison, someone's loss is always someone else's gain. I got into my car and stared at the Apex building. Darkness enveloped it like a shroud, and one by one the windows went dark, plunging the offices into darkness. 15 years of my life in that cursed glass tower. 15 years of accomplishments that they could so easily erase. Walter's smug face flashed in my memory, Ethan's undeserved confidence, the board members hiding their eyes. All the sacrifices I made for the company, only to be thrown away like used coffee grounds. No, I wouldn't let it end like this. The decision formed instantly. The next morning, I signed a partnership agreement with Josephine. By noon, I had an office in the Manhattan branch of Global Healthcare Solutions. I specifically chose a space with a view of Walter's corner office across the river, let him admire it. And by evening, I had finished developing a consulting proposal for the Mayo Clinic, deftly circumventing all the restrictions of my draconian non-compete agreement. Only 3 days after my termination, I received a message from Nicole, my former assistant. Ethan can't find the Westlake integration documentation. The board meeting is in complete chaos. Walter is furious. A sweet sense of revenge washed over me. The game had just begun. A smile touched my lips. The Westlake documents hadn't disappeared. They were right where they belonged, in the acquisition notes/Westlake/final folder on the shared drive. But without me, without my 15-year mental map of the systems and processes, finding anything in the Apex chaos was like a blind man wandering through a labyrinth. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I had simply stopped being their atlas, holding up their world. A week later, I launched my consulting practice, carefully prepared with the help of Josephine's legal team. My first client was the Cleveland Clinic. The task was to evaluate their healthcare management systems in anticipation of a contract renewal. 2 weeks later, I received a message from Nicole, they lost the Riverside Medical Center contract today. The CFO is in complete despair. Riverside Medical Center had been wavering for months. But I was the one who knew how to reassure their procurement team, allay their fears, and keep them with the company. I felt a wave of satisfaction rise within me. As soon as I left, the relationships at Apex seemed to wither without watering. I wasn't poaching clients, there was no need. The connections had always been built on personal trust in me, not the brand. Without my involvement, the accounts naturally gravitated toward the care and attention they were used to. Meanwhile, at Global Healthcare Solutions, I began building something revolutionary. Josephine kept her promise: complete freedom, unlimited resources, no shadow of doubt. I poached 3 talented analysts from Apex who were undervalued there, timing it to avoid legal problems with the non-solicitation agreement. Together, we developed a client management approach, combining the best practices of Apex with innovative ideas that I had been proposing for years but that Walter had dismissed as unnecessary. The results were immediate. By the second month, we had signed contracts with 2 mid-sized hospital networks that had been on Apex's prospect list for years. We weren't forcing our way in, but offering something better, something I had always dreamed of creating but couldn't because of the limitations at Apex. The Cleveland Clinic evaluation was progressing smoothly. Each meeting revealed more anxieties about the future direction of Apex. Each analysis sounded the alarm, pointing out the risks of their newfangled management approach. Each comparison showcased Global Healthcare Solutions' innovative solutions, effortlessly solving problems that the Cleveland Clinic didn't even know existed. And then came the moment of truth, the moment when everything became crystal clear. I was working late in my new office, and the lights of Apex twinkled across the river when the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Madison Lanier," I answered. "Madison, this is Walter." The blood in my veins first iced over, then boiled with fury. The audacity to call me after everything he'd done. "Walter," my voice was deliberately even. "I wasn't expecting that. I think we started your departure off on the wrong foot," he said, that saccharine tone in his voice that he used when he was trying to manipulate someone. "The board has been re-evaluating the situation. Maybe we acted too hastily." "Too hastily?" I echoed, infusing the words with all my bitterness. "After 15 years. He cleared his throat. "The point is, there might be a chance to bring you back as a senior advisor. The team misses your expertise. They're drowning without me." The thought sent a wave of unadulterated, almost savage joy through me, and I didn't try to suppress it. "That's certainly a generous offer," I said, my gaze fixed on the glittering Apex building across the river. "Unfortunately, I'm completely absorbed in other projects right now." "We're prepared to make you an incredibly lucrative offer," he insisted, the tension palpable in Walter's voice. "Whatever you're making now, we'll offer more." Images flashed through my mind: partnership at Global Healthcare Solutions, stock options, a board seat, complete autonomy, everything Walter would never have truly offered me. "It's not about the money, Walter. It never was." "Then what do you want?" His voice dripped with unconcealed frustration. "Just tell me." What did I want? Revenge had seemed so simple and straightforward at the start. Make them suffer. Make them regret letting me go so easily. But now, as I built something entirely new at Global Healthcare Solutions, I realized revenge was too small. I craved validation. I wanted them to realize the invaluable opportunity they had squandered. "I want you to learn a lesson," I said quietly, watching the setting sun reflect off the Apex windows. "But I'm afraid you're simply incapable." "Don't be childish, Madison. This is business. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions. Replacing me with your son-in-law, Walter, isn't a difficult decision, it's a cowardly one. And now you're reaping the consequences." I paused, letting my words sink in. "You didn't appreciate what you had. Someone else did. This isn't revenge, Walter, it's capitalism. Isn't that what you taught me?" A long silence followed, broken only by his icy snarl. "You won't get away with this." The non-compete is airtight, as your lawyers have already confirmed. I'm not working directly for your competitors for a year. I'm an independent consultant. I didn't poach your employees, they came to me. Everything I'm doing is perfectly legal. A faint but satisfied smile played on my lips. I studied contract law watching you wield it for years. This isn't over, he hissed, venom dripping from every word. No, Walter, it ended the moment you decided I was a pawn to be discarded. You just haven't realized it yet. I pressed the end call button, my heart pounding, but a triumphant joy surged within me. The call I'd been waiting for had sounded like a death knell for them. Without me, they were drowning in problems. The Cleveland Clinic bill was escalating, threatening their financial well-being. And the Summit acquisition, as I'd predicted, had turned into a regulatory compliance nightmare. 3 days later, Nicole sent a message that hit the bullseye: Summit deal on hold. Emergency board meeting called. Ethan in the hot seat about the failed audit. Summit, the deal that was supposed to be Walter's triumph, now falling apart due to issues I would have spotted in an instant. Issues that Ethan, with his hedge fund background and 7 months of experience, simply missed. That weekend, I received an email from Trevor, the CFO, the one who couldn't meet my eyes the day I was fired. The subject line was succinct: you were right. Inside, just one file, the minutes from the board meeting. And there, in black and white, it stated that the emergency meeting where the decision to replace me was made had been scheduled 3 long weeks before my termination. A betrayal, meticulously planned and coldly executed. Walter had lied shamelessly, about the timeline, about the motives, about everything. Trevor was finally struck by a spark of belated remorse. Too late to save me, but just in time to witness his downfall. The Cleveland Clinic decision was delivered triumphantly, exactly as I had orchestrated. Their expert panel recommended an unconditional transition to the Global Healthcare Solutions platform, highlighting the innovative approach, unprecedented security, and well-established relationship system. The contract, a colossal $52 million a year with an expanded service package developed by me, was to take effect immediately after the expiration of the current agreement, just 3 weeks away. Josephine was ecstatic. This is just the beginning, she declared during our victory dinner. With you at the head of client relations, we'll secure all the key contracts within 2 years. I smiled, raising my glass to the restoration of justice. She clinked her glass against mine, to the women who refuse to fade into oblivion when they're pushed aside. But the next morning brought news I was utterly unprepared for. Apex Health Innovation stock plummeted a staggering 22% immediately after the announcement of the loss of the Cleveland Clinic contract. Analysts were writing the company's obituary, and TechWire was blaring about an anonymous source claiming the Summit Group acquisition fell through due to egregious regulatory compliance oversights ignored by senior management. I wasn't that source, I had no need to be. When the system is rotten, the truth has a way of surfacing on its own. By noon, 3 hospital networks were already calling me, seeking consultations on evaluating their contracts with Apex Health Innovations. A chain reaction had begun. Not because I was deliberately trying to sink Apex Health Innovations, but because I had withdrawn my support. Late that evening, still at the Global Healthcare Solutions office, I received a text from Nicole: Walter resigned. Board of directors accepted unanimously. And Ethan is leaving too. They're saying crisis managers are being called in. I walked to the window and stared at the Apex Health Innovations building across the river. 15 years of my life in that tower. 15 years they thought they could erase with a frigid, your services are no longer required. I hadn't wanted to destroy Walter or Apex Health Innovations. I simply redirected my significance, moved it to a more deserving place. I built something superior. I allowed the natural consequences to unfold. The true, devastating revenge wasn't in poaching clients or publicly exposing their missteps. No, it was in proving, to them and to myself, that I had always been the driving force behind their success, that without me, all the flaws I had skillfully concealed for years had finally burst forth. Walter firmly believed that Apex Health Innovations was his brainchild, his immortal legacy. But now, the bitter truth seared his consciousness. All these years, I hadn't been working for Apex Health Innovations. Apex Health Innovations had thrived solely because of me. A sudden phone vibration alerted me to an incoming email. The Cleveland Clinic contract was finalized and awaiting my signature. The first major victory in a series of upcoming triumphs. A victory born not from destruction, but from creation. A victory based on the long-awaited recognition of my true worth. My hand confidently signed the document, and I turned my gaze back to the Apex Health Innovations building visible across the river. Its lights seemed dimmed, its grandeur faded. "Goodbye, Walter," I whispered, looking out the window. "Your services are no longer required." My voice held not malice, but a quiet assurance of my own vindication.